Amalfi. Amalfi is one of the busiest towns on the coast, second only to Positano in popularity. Its history is larger than life. Along with Venice, Genoa, and Pisa, it was one of the four major maritime republics of medieval Italy. Amalfi, which was known for its shipbuilding and navigation, dominated Mediterranean trade in the 10th and 11th centuries. Amalfi became a sleepy fishing village by the Renaissance, a long way from its heyday. Today, Amalfi welcomes over 2 million visitors annually. The town may feel overrun with tourists in the summer, especially near the waterfront and in the Piazza del Duomo. The crown jewel of Amalfi is the Cathedral of St. Andrew. It stands atop an imposing stairway that draws notice right away and dominates the Piazza del Duomo. The cathedral was built in the 9th century and has been changed many times over the years. These changes created a unique mix of architectural styles. It is dedicated to St. Andrew, whose relics were brought to Amalfi from Constantinople in 1208. The striped facade was inspired by Arab Norman design. Its bronze doors, also imported from Constantinople in 1066, are some of the oldest in Italy. Amalfi streets are narrow and full of surprises. They reflect the town's medieval origins, designed more for pedestrians than for modern vehicles. The main street, Via Lorenzo di Amalfi, is the town's central artery. It leads from the harbor to the Piazza del Duomo. Traveling to Amalfi is difficult due to crowded buses and a lack of parking. The majority of tourists choose shuttle services or ferries. Due to increased tourism, Amalfi is now more expensive for both lodging and dining. That makes it less affordable for tourists on a tight budget. Positano. If you're coming from Naples or Sorrento, Positano is the first major town you encounter along the famous SS-163 Amalfi Drive. It sits on the western edge of the Amalfi coast, about 37 kilometers from Naples and not far from Sorrento. It's undoubtedly the most famous and iconic town on the Amalfi coast, and its fame comes from its sheer aesthetic appeal. The town's reputation for luxury, glamour, and cinematic beauty makes it a bucket list destination for travelers worldwide. Positano wasn't always a glamorous hotspot. It was part of the powerful Amalfi Republic during the Middle Ages. But like many coastal towns, it faced pirate raids, which led to the construction of defensive watchtowers that still can be seen on the coast today. It's the most visited town on the Amalfi coast. Unlike quieter neighbors like Praiano or Ravello, Positano is synonymous with glamour. The beach, Spiaggia Grande, is a pebble-strewn crescent that feels like the heart of Positano. Amalfi may be historic, and Ravello may have better views, but Positano is everyone's darling. Praiano. The nearby village of Praiano is a great alternative to Positano if you want to avoid the crowds. Located only a 15-minute drive away, the peaceful charm and local flavor of Praiano, a tiny fishing community, are sometimes difficult to find along Amalfi coast well-beaten path. Geographically, Praiano is split into two main areas, Vetica Maggiore, which faces Positano, and Praiano proper, overlooking the sea toward Amalfi. Vetica Maggiore is home to the Church of San Gennaro. This 16th-century church is known for its serene piazza with a view of the sea and its eye-catching dome covered in Majolica tiles. The beaches around here are mostly just flat concrete slabs on the rocks, with a steep staircase that takes you back up to the real world. For newlyweds, families, and lone tourists seeking a more genuine Amalfi experience, Praiano looks ideal. Furore. Unlike other villages along the Amalfi coast, Furore is truly unique. It's quieter, smaller, and more niche. It is not centered on a busy piazza or hanging down cliffs. Rather, it hides. Set high above the ocean, this peaceful community has a stunning secret, a fjord straight out of a fairy tale book. Fiordo di Furore is a narrow inlet where the sea cuts into the cliffs. A small beach and blue Mediterranean waves are framed by sheer granite walls that rise on either side. A 30-meter high bridge crosses the gap above it all and provides one of the most recognizable views of the Amalfi coast. The Amalfi Drive, built in the 19th century, was intended to connect the cities of the Amalfi coast. The bridge over Furore's fjord was an important part of this complex project. But the view from the bridge above the fjord is not the only reason it is famous. It's a popular cliff diving destination, and it hosts the annual Marmeeting Cliff Diving Championship since 1990. Divers from all over the world jump from the bridge into the crystal-clear waters below. The height of 30 meters adds an element of danger that makes each dive a spectacle. The little, quiet beach at the base of the fjord is accessible via a steep staircase or by boat. Conca de Marini. If you accept the hairpin turns that curve up and down a hill to arrive to Conca de Marini, you'll find it to be a charming area. The village's shape, a seaside valley filled with little white houses, gives it its name. It may have been established by the Tyrrhenians under the name Casa. Conca de Marini is undoubtedly an idyllic spot, but what exactly is there to do there? Not a lot, to be honest, but enough for a single day of exploration. Visitors come here to escape, to relax, to enjoy the scenery without the crowds. One of the most remarkable Saracen towers on the Amalfi coast is the Tower of Silence, also known as the White Tower. Originally constructed as a cemetery in the 6th century, the White Tower provides an amazing view, particularly when viewed from the sea. Conca de Marini has a population of around 700 residents and is one of the smallest towns on the Amalfi coast. There is a tiny marina with fishing boats and shimmering waters at sea level. Sitting on terraces above, the village is surrounded by Mediterranean scrub, lemon groves, and olive trees. The two are connected by staircases and narrow walkways. The stunning Emerald Grotto, with its emerald tints reflecting off the underwater rocks, is accessible by lift or stairs. Amalfi. Amalfi is one of the busiest towns on the coast, second only to Positano in popularity. Its history is larger than life. Along with Venice, Genoa, and Pisa, it was one of the 4 major maritime republics of medieval Italy. Amalfi, which was known for its shipbuilding and navigation, dominated Mediterranean trade in the 10th and 11th centuries. Amalfi became a sleepy fishing village by the Renaissance, a long way from its heyday. Today, Amalfi welcomes over 2 million visitors annually. The town may feel overrun with tourists in the summer, especially near the waterfront and in the Piazza del Duomo. The crown jewel of Amalfi is the Cathedral of St. Andrew. It stands atop an imposing stairway that draws notice right away and dominates the Piazza del Duomo. The cathedral was built in the 9th century and has been changed many times over the years. These changes created a unique mix of architectural styles. It is dedicated to St. Andrew, whose relics were brought to Amalfi from Constantinople in 1208. The striped facade was inspired by Arab Norman design. Its bronze doors, also imported from Constantinople in 1066, are some of the oldest in Italy. Amalfi streets are narrow and full of surprises. They reflect the town's medieval origins, designed more for pedestrians than for modern vehicles. The main street, Via Lorenzo di Amalfi, is the town's central artery. It leads from the harbor to the Piazza del Duomo. Traveling to Amalfi is difficult due to crowded buses and a lack of parking. The majority of tourists choose shuttle services or ferries. Due to increased tourism, Amalfi is now more expensive for both lodging and dining. That makes it less affordable for tourists on a tight budget. Atrani. Atrani feels almost like an extension of its larger, more famous neighbor, Amalfi, because of how close they are. Less than a kilometer separates the two towns. They are connected geographically and historically. When Amalfi was a strong maritime republic, its elite lived in the quieter residential area, today known as Atrani. The two towns are connected by a 10-minute pedestrian walkway. Despite being so close to Amalfi, Atrani has managed to avoid the same level of tourist crowds. Agriculture and fishing, not tourism, were the main drivers of Atrani's economy for many years. The town was not intended to serve tourists. Due in large part to the rise of independent travelers and the impact of social media, Atrani started to garner greater notice in the 2000s. Atrani's history is surprisingly significant for such a little town. Amalfi's doges were crowned here back in the Middle Ages. These ceremonies took place at the Church of San Salvatore de Berrecto. The main attraction here is Collegiata di Santa Maria Maddalena. This 13th century church is a standout. Its beautiful white and yellow facade is visible from almost anywhere in Atrani. The simplicity of Atrani is what makes it so appealing. It lacks luxury shops and imposing monuments. Rather, it provides peaceful beaches and streets that seem to have been unchanged for generations. Ravello. Ravello sits about 365 meters above sea level, high in the Lutari Mountains. It's not a coastal town, technically speaking, it's a cliffside hideaway. This elevation gives Ravello some of the best views on the Amalfi coast. They don't call it the Terrace of Infinity for nothing. Unlike Amalfi or Positano, which are crammed into valleys or perched on cliffs, Ravello feels much more open. There's space to breathe. Ravello has always had an air of sophistication. Ravello stands out as one of Amalfi Coast's most refined destinations. Unlike Positano or Amalfi, it avoids overwhelming crowds. However, it's far from overlooked. With about 1 million visits a year, it is a contender. Considering that the town has fewer than 2,500 residents, these figures are remarkable. Its appeal lies in its peaceful, sophisticated atmosphere. People come here to enjoy classical concerts in the evening and garden walks at sunset. Villa Ruffalo is a masterpiece of Moorish-inspired architecture that was constructed in the 13th century by a prosperous merchant family. Its sea-facing gardens, filled with colorful blooms, are legendary. When Wagner came here, he was so moved that he composed parts of Parsifal. The 11th century Duomo di Ravello was constructed in honor of Saint Pantaleon. As a reminder of Ravello's wealthy past, the bronze doors are located inside the cathedral. Scala. Scala is the oldest town on the Amalfi Coast. But should it be on your radar? Not really. You're probably not coming to the Amalfi Coast to study medieval fortifications or learn about a Benedictine monk who founded the Knights of Malta. Scala doesn't cater to the tourist fantasy. It's quiet, almost too quiet. Peaceful, almost too peaceful. And unless you're specifically looking for isolation, it might just leave you underwhelmed. Scala sits high in the hills, across the valley from Ravello. At 400 meters above sea level, it looks down at the coastline. The terrain gives the impression of a mountain retreat rather than a seaside resort. There are small hamlets, thick greenery, and layered landscapes. The lack of public transport options and parking makes Scala feel even more disconnected. The town is for hikers or people who just want to avoid the crowds. But if you're someone who thrives on energy and excitement, you'll be bored here. Minori. Minori fits snugly between Maiori and Ravello. It's one of the smallest towns along the Amalfi Coast, yet its location is superb. Unlike several hilltop communities, Minori is at sea level. This means you'll have a proper beach. Not a big one, but enough to remind you that you're on the Amalfi Coast. The Lutari Mountains rise in the distance. It's not as dramatic as the cliffside chaos in Positano, but that's the point. Minori is casual, accessible, and simple to navigate. Foodies will find paradise at Minori. Its strong culinary legacy has earned it its nickname, City of Taste. It's a travel destination for everyone who is passionate about Italian cuisine. The restaurants serve delicacies, such as silatielli al limone and handmade pastries. Minori has a local vibe. You'll see grandmothers talk to each other in doorways, children play football in the piazza, and fishermen unload their haul. Minori's beach isn't massive, but it's clean and inviting. The town's main church is dedicated to Saint Trophimina, the town's patron saint. Legend has it her relics were miraculously found on Minori's beach. You can get to Minori from Ravello by walking down a safe and signed path, downhill for 20 minutes. It's one of the most scenic and rewarding hiking paths on the Amalfi Coast. Maiori. With its 5,500 residents, Maiori is one of the larger towns on the Amalfi Coast. The town stands on a rare piece of flat land. This flat terrain offers practical benefits. It makes room for wider streets, a big promenade, and a sandy beach, all of which are uncommon on the coast. Tourism peaks during the summer months, and over 500,000 people travel to Maiori, including day trippers. The Santa Maria a Mare Church is Maiori's most iconic landmark. Its tiled dome is visible from nearly anywhere in town. The castle of San Nicola de Thuriplano is a medieval stronghold that overlooks the town. It's a bit of a climb to get there, but the scenery and historical significance are worth it. Torre Normana is a historical watchtower that today houses a fine dining restaurant. Maiori's promenade runs alongside its sandy beach. Maiori has the longest beach along the Amalfi Coast. It's sandy, large, and family-friendly, with numerous beach clubs and free areas. Maiori is bordered by terraced lemon groves which produce Fissato Amalfitano, the region's most valuable lemon variety. Erchie. Erchie sits in a small bay between Cetara and Maiori, just off the iconic Amalfi Drive. Legend has it that Erchie was founded by Benedictine monks who built a monastery here dedicated to Santa Maria Assunta. It's small, only a few streets and houses, but surrounded by green hills and terraced lemon gardens. The beach is the centerpiece of the village. Compared to other Amalfi Coast beaches, it is far less crowded, sandy, and family-friendly. The tiny population of 100 people gives the village an intimate, almost private feel. Most of the houses are clustered around the beach, and life here revolves around the sea. Who comes to Erchie? mostly Italians. Many visitors are locals from nearby towns or families spending a quiet day at the beach. International tourists rarely make it here. That keeps the atmosphere relaxed and authentic. If you're staying in nearby Cetara or Maiori, you can hike to Erchie along scenic coastal paths. Cetara. Just 2 kilometers east of Erchie, you'll stumble upon Cetara. Like most Amalfi Coast towns, it is built into the cliffs. Cetara's history is inseparable from the sea. The name is most likely derived from the Latin word cetaria, which means tuna fishing nets. It reflects the area's long history of fishing. Over the centuries, the town has maintained a relationship to fishing, specializing in tuna and anchovy production, a legacy that continues to this day. The main church, Chiesa di San Pietro Apostolo, is a modest yet beautiful example of local religious architecture. Torre di Cetara, an old medieval tower intended to protect against pirate raids, watches over the town. Cetara's harbor feels real and unpretentious. Early morning is the best time to see the fishermen in action. So, is there much to do in Cetara? Not really. But sometimes, doing less is exactly what you need. In Cetara, life slows down, the food takes center stage, and the simple joys of coastal living shine through. Vietri sul Mare. Vietri sul Mare is the official starting point of the Amalfi Coast if you're arriving from Salerno. This is your first taste of the coastline, and what a taste it is. The town sits right at the eastern edge of the Amalfi Coast, just 3 kilometers from Salerno. It has a more accessible and less claustrophobic feel. The ceramics industry in Vietri sul Mare, which has existed since at least the 15th century, is an integral part of the city's history. The town's wealth of clay and its favorable location for trade made it a center for pottery production. Historically, Vietri was more of a working-class town, focused on agriculture, fishing, and pottery. While other Amalfi Coast towns were building grand cathedrals and maritime fleets, Vietri was quietly mastering its craft. The town is known as the capital of ceramics. As you walk through its streets, you will come across countless stores selling hand-painted tiles and vases. The 17th century Church of San Giovanni Battista, with its green and yellow tiled dome, is Vietri's most recognizable building. The town's main beach is more functional than attractive. Vietri is compact and walkable. Once you're there, you won't need any transport to explore the town itself. What's your favorite town on the Amalfi Coast? Leave a comment and let us know.